I saw this because on social media, a lot of people have been going wild because apparently there are new guidelines wanting to give kids weight loss drugs and surgery for obesity. And it's kind of interesting.
How old are these kids?
From what I read, it was as young as 12 and 13.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is out with new guidelines for the first time in 15 years when it comes to the treatment for childhood obesity.
I mean, doctors are like suggesting exercise and nutrition, but the main thing is like, are people doing it? Are habits set within people's lifestyles to make that happen?
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? I interviewed Stephen Guyenet, and he speaks about obesity. And he said that childhood obesity can be caused by obesity in a mother that can be passed down to the fetus in utero. So we're not just talking about the poor kid. Let's look at mum. Is she big? Is she obese? Is she watching what she's eating to develop the brain of her fetus? And this is what he said. If we know now that you can pass down these obesity genes or just obesity through poor lifestyle habits of when you are pregnant, it's going to affect the poor kid as well.
Garcia says for as long as she can remember, doctors told her she was overweight. What did the doctor or others tell you to do?
Just to exercise and eat better.
She struggled unsuccessfully for years. Then, at age 15, she developed hypertension and became pre-diabetic. With parental permission, she finally tried bariatric weight loss surgery last June, along with counseling for emotional eating. Since then, she has lost more than 90 pounds.
When it comes to bariatric surgery, I know, and this is again from my conversation with Stephen, sometimes it can be a good thing in overly obese adults. We never spoke about getting that in children. Without knowing too much about her, we've got to really understand where are the eating patterns come from, or is she just, because the doctor said to eat well and exercise. Okay, does she know what eating well is? My brother has 3 girls, and one is 15, then it's 13, and then it's like 10. And what they go through at school now is very different to what I went through. Kids are now more cautious of their weight. But what are the kids at school saying to her? Because they look on TikTok now. When I was young, there was no phones, so I didn't have to see. I just saw the people in front of me. But now you're seeing millions of kids worldwide, and maybe even teenagers, and you think, I need to look like that. I need to be that pretty.
I have people in my life that are friends of mine, and they also have children, and they have bad eating habits. But what tends to happen is that spills over to their kids' eating habits. So they're overweight, and then their children are also overweight. But like Mark, you mentioned, your kids have made decisions based off of what you and Andy eat. Right? It's like what you bring home is what they eat, and both of them are healthy. So
yeah, and I think it also is, on the same token, I think it's a little bit of the roll of the dice. Like we got lucky that they found that to be helpful in their life, that they found that they're not going to overeat.
I think maybe culture as well comes into it.
The new guidelines from the AAP recommend better nutrition, exercise, and face-to-face counseling. Treatment may also include weight loss drugs and surgery for adolescents who meet the criteria. What do you think about these new guidelines?
I think that it's definitely a step in the right direction.
How do you thread that needle between body shaming and communicating that there are some consequences to your health if you're overweight or obese?
It is not about how you look, it's how your body is on the inside.
I'm actually curious what you think of that, because as we found on the podcast, if you're older and overweight and obese, that is a much worse outcome than when you're younger and overweight and obese. It's like you can get away with certain things when you're younger, whereas as you age with that issue, if it doesn't pass the eye test, sometimes it's also not going to pass the blood test.
When we think about what's happening internally, I think she mentioned hypertension from being overweight or quote unquote obese. Hypertension, chronic elevated blood pressure can wreak havoc on the brain. We know that if you have elevated blood pressure, it can actually kill, like the tiny capillaries that are 1 cell thick in your brain can collapse. And that's what we see when we get older. How old was this girl?
I think she was 16 when she had, I think it says she was 16.
And that's when a girl is starting to, develop, or maybe they've already developed, but they're starting to interact with the opposite sex. And imagine having a girl say, I've just had surgery and I'm on obesity medication. Like it must be very hard on her. So I can only understand, like, what are the secondary effects of these drugs?
She was mentioning like fat shaming, etc., fat acceptance. What are your thoughts on it?
I have seen a lot of advertising now to say that plus size models are, accepting, and that's great. Generally speaking, I am a plus size model. So to see I'm not, if I was my size, but to see an overly obese woman, I'm talking morbid, unhealthy obesity.
Yes.
And they're putting it, they're in their bikinis and they're like, I'm loving myself. I'm like, unfortunately, that is sickness. We have to really think about what are you doing to your body, your heart, your immune system, and your brain when you're
As somebody that
big.
studies this, you see the inside more
Yeah.
so. Like the outside is
Yeah.
is a clue, and then you're thinking, man, the machinery inside's got to be all messed up.
Yeah, and so why are we just have a look at LDL. We know that LDL, which is quote unquote the bad cholesterol, if that is elevated over 70, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. So we try and do everything to promote a good and healthy lifestyle. Why should we be giving this morbidly obese woman a chance to say to girls, love your bodies? Because everyone should love their body, but you should want to also be healthy. Obesity is a risk factor for many diseases and the biggest ones in the world: cardiovascular disease, cancer, and stroke.
Parabraj family, how's it going? Now, sleep is essential for your recovery and your performance, which is why we partner with 8 Sleep mattresses. We call them the Tesla of beds. Changes its temperature based off how you sleep. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yeah, head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject, and at checkout, you guys will automatically save $150 off your entire order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
The AAP is making it clear that more aggressive early intervention is needed.
Really interesting, Dr. LaPook. Thank you.
I say amen to that.
But-
That's true. But not necessarily from the medical community.
You know, it's interesting. They put this out there and she said, after my bariatric surgery, I felt so good. But what was she doing when she said, I tried everything? What was she doing?
Are you insinuating was she actually trying
Was
in terms
she-
of
yeah.
eating better and exercising?
Or what kind of help was she getting?
Yeah.
Who was directing that?
Yeah.
And all that. And it sounds like she was trying to get help and
Which is
didn't
good.
lead to
Yeah.
a great result.
Yeah, but that could be the wrong type of help. Maybe,
Correct.
her parents might have said, that's okay, you can eat a burger. You can eat this, but if we're looking at calories in, calories out, were you tracking that? Were you monitoring it? Do you know what a calorie is?
When it comes to kids, really try to introduce protein to them, many different kinds of protein. I think a huge problem is that a lot of parents are absent. A lot of parents aren't really around, and it is the number one thing in the United States, in my opinion, that kids are not growing up with enough support, however you want to say that, right? But they're not growing up with enough support, and I think that's a huge factor. You'll hear a lot of people say this needs to be taught in school, that needs to be taught in school, and that would be cool. But the government has really never stepped in on anything and really done anything that impactful that's been awesome in the first place. So it's probably never going to happen. It's just wishful thinking. And so instead of waiting for the schools to teach it, teach nutrition in your home, teach exercise in your home.
I think when it comes to the government also not, playing its part, it's about advertising as well, like we said. I recently found out that Coca-Cola food labels with the FDA don't have to be 100% accurate. You can actually, I think you can be out of range by at least 20%.
Oh,
That's for
beautiful.
everybody. That's important to know. It's for everybody.
What do you mean for everybody?
It's for all nutritional facts and everything. Yeah.
So you're reading a label, okay, for argument's sake, and it says 100 calories on there. Really, that means there's 120 calories. So that's when you add them all up, you're ingesting, if you're calorie counting, you're ingesting. So that's a lie. I was mortified because Coca-Cola do that. When I read this, they lie about the amount of calories within a Coca-Cola can. That's, I think, where marketing comes in. You're not going to see, 3 sexy girls pouring water all over themselves or broccoli, right? It's more so,
Carl's Jr.
Carl's Jr.
commercial.
Do you know those?
I don't know who they are. Yeah.
When I was a kid, when I'd see those Carl's Jr. commercials on the TV, I'd be like,
I'm pretty sure she's not eating, those burgers. But see, there we go. Advertising. For young boys, they'd probably be like, I don't know what they're thinking.
I ate
was
Carl's
never
Jr.
a young
after
boy,
that.
so
Well,
I don't know.
It affected me. Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't want to know how. But we'll just say that you wanted the burger.
I did. I really did.
Gave him an appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's think of this real quick. And Louisa, if you could give us just a quick rundown on what you would suggest here, because on the podcast we did with you, we talk about sleep all the time. Quick things that parents can do to make sure that their kids get their sleep, because that's
Yeah.
hard as a parent.
First of all, get rid of the phones because it's going to help with not just getting them to sleep, but also with addiction. We know that addiction to this dopamine addiction that's getting released through the TikTok and through Instagram, that's havoc on the brain.
Yes.
It's also rewiring the brain in different ways, and they're seeing things they shouldn't. And if your kid is eating the right amount of food and they're getting out and getting sunlight and running and community involvement, they're being kids, get them out instead of playing video games, and they're exercising and you're watching and monitoring what they're eating to an extent. If all else fails and they're still big, maybe get them a genetic test, find out why. You're ravenous at that age. You're growing rapidly. Your brain is developing and creating so many different neurons. And so you need energy, but it's like, can you control that? Where's the energy coming from? Is it coming in the form of a steak or in the form of like chips and chocolate? So until you exhaust all options and maybe do a genetic test and then figure out what maybe the last resort is, 2 years, let's get you on this protocol, and then, but don't let that be the be all and end all. Don't let that be the end of the story. Like, she's had surgery, we don't have to care about the chips anymore and the chocolate.
Chime in about this and let us know what you guys think. I know it's very controversial, but let us know. We're curious. Louisa, where can people find you?
Louisa Nicola on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram.
Also, you have an amazing podcast.
It's called The Neuro Experience. It's like a university for the brain.
Strength's never weakness, weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.